And we are live. Your favorite boxing podcast is back, better than ever before. Back in action, episode 25 of Catch and Counter. I am Jack, and as always, I got my guy Nibs to the side of me. So Nibs, quarter century, we getting down a little bit. Episode 25, gaining traction little by little. So how you feeling? We got some big fights coming up this weekend, and the weekend's coming up. So it's a good time to be alive in the sport of boxing. So how we doing, my guy?
Hey, brother, I'm just happy. You know what I'm saying? Another week. You know what I'm saying? Congratulations to you on your work and what you've been putting through. You know what I'm saying? And look, bro, it's catch and counter. Fuck with us or fuck off. They know what it is. Let's go.
As you like to say, to the authority and all things boxing. And that's what we're here to bring to y'all today. Everything boxing. We're going to touch on a bunch of things. We're going to recap the fights from last weekend, look a little bit to the future of next weekend, and then also the fights we got coming up, and then talk a little bit of judging, some ways that we can kind of fix some of the problems in judging, hold them accountable, things like that. But first of all, the thing we're going to go to, we had some boxing last weekend. Pretty good card on the zone. It turned out we had two competitive fights. And then I kind of want to also touch on just the B-side guys because a lot of it, the narrative surrounding was kind of what the A-side guys didn't do. But for me, I think the B-side guys deserve the respect for doing what they did and kind of rising to the occasion. The main event was Richardson Hitchins against Gustavo Lemos. The result of the fight has kind of been debated back and forth a little bit. So, what were your thoughts on watching the fight between Gustavo Lemos and Richardson Hitchins? Kind of, who did you think won? Did you think it was a toss-up? And what were your thoughts just on what went on in those 12 rounds?
I mean, I wasn't mad at the scores. You know what I'm saying? Like it was a close fight, but I honestly think Hitchens took a L. If I'm being honest, you know what I mean. For me, for my money, I thought Lemos looked like the better guy that night. You know what I'm saying? Hitchens is the guy who was supposed to win. Lemos looked like the guy who wanted to win. You know what I'm saying? And that's what it looked like in the fight. And I'm gonna tell you something. Hitchens fights like that, when he moves up, he about to be in some trouble. So, again, we say this all the time. It's levels to this game. Anybody who had Hitchens way ahead or Lemos way ahead or vice versa, needs their head examined. It was a good close fight. So I'm not. I mean, one 17, 111. I thought was a little off, but I can't be mad at the two 115, 113. It's like legitimately couldn't. You know what I'm saying? There were some rounds that could have went either way, but I'm proud of Hitchens. He got another dub. He keeps his perfect record, and hopefully he learns from this and can move forward. But I'm telling you, he got another night like that in him. He about to be in some trouble because he's talking a lot of shit, for the people he wants to call out and the people he wants to fight. Well, the people you want to fight on a whole nother level than Lemos, bro. So, and hats off to Lemos, man. It's, 29-1 now. You know what I'm saying? And I think he's earned another shot. I think, you get that dude, some more money, put him in another ring. I'll watch it. I didn't really know much about him until, he fought Hitch, but he accounted for himself well, man. Like I wouldn't be mad at him getting another opportunity.
Yeah, that's the thing with these B-side guys, and we'll talk about Diego Pacheco right after this too. But instead of, I think, when you get fights like this, when the odds don't indicate how close the fight ended up being, a lot of people like to focus, as I said, on what the A side guy didn't do instead of they don't give enough credit to what the B side guy did do. Because at the end of the day, Hitchens was trying to do all the things. He's shown great boxing skills before, so we kind of already know where he stood. Now, you can kind of, as you said, have question marks about going forward. Where does he match up against a guy like Matias or certain guys in the weight class? But we know that Richardson Hitchens is a damn good fighter, so that didn't change. We just found out that Lemos is a damn good fighter too, and it adds another guy to the stacked 140-pound division. So I want to put some respect on his name for that. And just he had, I knew he was a brawler and he was going to be an aggressive guy, but his foot speed was something that I didn't realize how quick it was, especially against a guy like Hitchens. I thought Hitchens was going to be able to move laterally and kind of be one step ahead the whole time, but you saw right away in those first few rounds that it wasn't going to be an easy kind of fight, and I think Hitchens deserves a lot of credit for whenever you see those clean kind of boxers like that, people wonder if they do have dog in them. And even if you thought it was a close fight, or if you thought Lemos edged it, I think you got to give Hitchens credit for biting down on his mouthpiece and kind of dogging it out in some of those later rounds, landing some good shots on the inside and things like that also. But I did think that Hitchens actually did win 115, 113. Now, if you want to say it was Lemos 115, 113, I'm cool with that. A draw, I think, would have been a respectable outcome too. But the one thing, and we'll get to judging later on, and I thought Hitchens did win the fight, but the one thing I question is on the judging side. And this isn't the fault of Hitchins or Lemos or any of these guys, but two of the judges had Hitchins up 6-5 going into the last round. And I thought that Lemos probably edged the last round. That round then goes to Hitchins and he wins the fight. So as I said, I already had Hitchins ahead at that point. I got no problem with him winning to 7-5, but just the way two of the judges got to that 7-5 scorecard, that's what I have some questions on, and we're going to touch on that in a little bit as it relates to judging and some of the repercussions or lack of repercussions that we see in the sport. So we want to shout out. We got TJ in the building as always, one of the smartest boxing minds out there. Follow him on Twitter at Chilltown Boxing if you want to get your money up, because he's big into that betting boxing game and he's got some pretty damn good picks. So shout out to you, TJ, as always, and thank you for tuning in, bro.
Yes, sir. What's up, everybody in the comments section? We appreciate you as always. Look, man, I want to say this, bro, and it's one of the things in scoring fights that always boggles my mind, right? Like, no matter how you had the fight going into the 12th round, Lemos won the 12th round, bro. You know what I'm saying? And for me, it's one of those things where we've all seen rounds where it was obvious the other guy won. You know, we'll talk Rolly and Pitbull later, but when it's obvious, we're not talking a close round where you kind of, all right, I favor pressure, so I'm gonna give it to this guy, or I favor a guy who sets up his punches a little bit better, so I'm gonna give it to this dude, or you know what, this guy can kind of control it even though he was on the ropes, but he was doing his thing. You can nitpick at that point when you get a close round. We're talking about an obvious winner round that goes to the other guy. What are we talking about here, man? It's like, okay, explain to me why you gave this round to that guy. If you can do that intelligently, I'll listen. But for the most part, I've seen a lot of cards where it was obvious this dude won the round, and they give it to the other guy. I mean, it's not as egregious as CJ Ross calling, Floyd and Canelo a draw, but there's been some pretty bad ones, bro. And I just think that I get all three judges have a different vantage point of the ring. I get that point. We as fans, we get to see it from the best view, right? We get the TV view. That's another thing people do have to understand. We're not just gonna get on here and bash, referees and judges and all that. They have a vantage point that we don't. We don't get to see, right? We get the TV view, so we get all the angles, we get all the pretty shots, we get the slow-mo replays that they don't get to watch, right? They're watching it from their angle, from their view, so that's why you can see things going a different way. But then there are some, again, I can understand a close round, but when we're talking about rounds where it's obvious one guy won versus the other, I just need explanations for that. That's all. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to figure out how the fuck you give the 12th round to, okay, all right.
Like we said, even because I had that same score, I had 115, 113 for Hitchins. I just don't see. Sometimes it's not even that we question the scores. You're saying we question how you got to a certain score. When you have it this way at this point in the fight, and then you end up with the scorecard, I might have agreed with the score. Like I had that same score, I just didn't have it at that point. Just the kind of the rounds don't always add up the way they do. So we got Hybrid in the building. Shout out to you as always too. Said it was a good fight. Could have gone either way in my opinion. One judge had it way off, and that's the other thing too is that because I did have Hitchins winning, but I definitely didn't have him winning 117, 111. So that's going to speak on the accountability thing we talk about later on. Too. I think he won like maybe the last 4 rounds or something like that in the fight too, where he did land some good clean shots, but Lemos definitely kind of pulled it real tight in those last 3 rounds. Kind of had a little rally, but on one judge's scorecard, I guess he didn't see any of that. So, what you gonna do about that for now? Nothing we can do but
That's one
talk
of the
about it.
things, though, bro.
Mm-hmm.
You taking it, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
if you're honest with yourself, you know what I mean. If you had a 6-5 hitch going into that final round, do you give that round the Hitchins just because that's your guy? Nah, bro. We had Abraham Nova on the show recently, and I told him I keep it real with you. I keep it a buck. Of course, I had you going. I picked him to win that fight, but I think he lost the fight. If I'm judging it 100, and I tell him to his face, yeah, I picked you to win, but you lost that fight, bro. You lost that fight because of the knockdown. In my opinion, that's just me. I'm not a judge, so whatever. But we can't just because we like a guy say, oh well, he won the fight because I like him. Nah, you got to keep it 100. You got to tell these dudes, hey, you lost that fight, bro. They might have given it to you, but you lost that fight. You feel me? And you need to fix X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? But when we praise dudes for winning and having the blood and guts and balls to win fights, we also got to give them hell when they lose. Keep these motherfuckers accountable. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And even if he didn't lose, because I thought he still edged out a close fight, it's still kind of going back to the drawing board because you still, yeah, you won, but you could have made that fight a lot cleaner in certain situations. So it's still going back to the drawing board and having that accountability, win or lose. And I think you don't see that sometimes. If a guy kind of skates away with the win, they kind of forget all the troubles that they had in the fight and they don't build off of that going forward. But it seems like hopefully Hitchins and his team, and I'm sure he's got a smart team behind him. They'll kind of go back to the drawing board, even though they got the win. They'll look at certain things that they could have done better and they will do better for next time. But looking forward for both of these guys. I know that he's an IBF title eliminator, so Hitchins is now the mandatory for Subriel Matias, but he's a big dude at 140. I think he mentioned that the IBF rehydration clause, which I think is a 10-pound rehydration clause, which is it can be pretty tight. A lot of guys gain more than 10 pounds even at 140 pounds, so I think that kind of affected him a little bit. I don't think he made any excuses, but just was being honest about it. Said, yeah, that wasn't easy. It ain't an easy thing to only gain 10 pounds when you're a bigger guy at the 140-pound division. So it looks like he might look to go another route for a title. I know he's ranked high in the WBC and the WBO, so that could be fights against Sandor Martin or Arnold Barboza to become mandatories. I know they've mentioned the fight with Regis Prograis. Then I think Gustavo Lemos is right back in the mix too. I know that I'm not sure who we see him in with next, but I'll tell you one thing. I would love to see him and Isaac Cruz get in there. I think two kind of styles that would just meet each other in the center of the ring. We talked about Matias and Isaac Cruz, but whether it's even Matias and Lemos or Lemos and Isaac Cruz, I think he fits in perfect with any of those offensive guys, and I'd want to see how they kind of deal with each other. But for both guys, if or any of those names I threw out there, do those jump out to you as things you want to see next, things you don't want to see next, or anything like that?
So I'm gonna tell you something. I don't think either one of these dudes is ready for Matisse. That dude different. And I know that term gets thrown around a lot, but look, if you want to see different, watch Matias fight, bro. A lot of people think, see, people they get drunk in this shit. They think, oh, them first 4 rounds, he gonna give you them first 4 rounds because he's downloading the data, right? He gonna let you get your shit off. He gonna be right there with you the whole time. And then in that 5th round, you gonna be making life decisions. You know what I'm saying? He really is different. The next thing you know, you sitting back on your stool like, where the fuck did I get myself into? You know what I'm talking about? So I think Matias is a problem for anybody at 140 hybrid. I appreciate you for that. I think he's a problem for everybody. I don't really think anybody really wants that smoke. If Hitchens thinks he can go up there, God bless him, but it's not going to happen. I don't think Lemos is on that level either. And I think that Pitbull at this point has earned his right to call out whoever he wants to call out next. Unless he wants to take I hate to use this term because I don't think either one of these guys is a soft touch. But if he wants to take a night off against one of these guys, so be it. But the risk of fighting one of these dudes, right, is high. So I don't think that would be a smart move either. But Pitbull has proven he's a tough motherfucker. You know what I mean? And the boy can take some shots. Rolly, for all of his mistakes, the boy can hit. And he hits hard. Ask Tank. He'll tell you. He hit Pitbull square solid, and Pitbull walked right through them bitches. Like, hey, you got to respect a dude like that, right? So I think Pitbull is on another level. I think Matias is on another level. I wouldn't mind seeing the two of them fight each other, to be honest with you. But I think Hitchens needs he needs a good one, maybe two more solid fights against another solid guy for me to say, okay, he's ready for a belt against any of the guys holding belts right now. Because 140 got some dogs with the straps. None of them dudes is an easy win. None of the dudes currently holding belts at 140. Now that Rolly done got beat, you can't name one of them dudes and go, okay, well that's a soft touch.
Not at
Period.
all. That's why 140 is my favorite division now. It kind of reminds me of the way 154 has been. I think it's even deeper. You look at 140. I don't think there's another division in the sport. Yeah, you might have some divisions that have bigger names, like the heavyweight division is pretty big. Light heavyweights got Bivol and Beterbiev fighting each other. You got Canelo and Benavidez at 168, but there ain't another division in boxing that goes one to about 20, 25 of legit contenders who can contend at the world level. So that's why even I threw some names out there, but you can mix and match. Like I said, you can just go to like any rankings at 140, look at like the top 20, mix and match Lemos and Hitchins with any of those dudes, and I would take it. So I do think that obviously Pitbull's probably gonna take a Tank Davis rematch later on this year if Tank does get past Frank Martin, but if he does look at one of those other two guys, I'd be careful about it. I hope his team don't look at it as a night off because those two guys, I think Hitchens' boxing skills are still legit. And Lemos showed you better come to fight against him too. So either way, I hope Lemos does get another opportunity. I'm sure that he will because too often you kind of see these guys give a scare to an A-side guy, and then because of that, instead of helping their chances, it kind of hurts their chances of getting an opportunity because, as you said, they become too high risk, low reward. I hope that they kind of play the sanctioning body game right so he gets forced into an opportunity because, hey, after last Saturday night, whether you thought he won, lost, or got a draw, he showed he's a legit contender at 140, and he deserves a big fight without a doubt too.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen it. We've all seen the guy come in and give the prospect or the champ, hail, and then they go away. And it's like, well, hold on, wait a minute. What happened to that one dude who was whooping up, so and so, and the other guy got lucky or caught him with a punch or something. What happened to that guy? We've seen that a million times. And I hope this, in Lemos's camp, and I'm pretty sure they'll figure it out. I mean, he's only got one loss in 30 fights. So, against Hitchins, right? So it's who we all think the world of. And I still do. I'm giving him shit, but I don't think anyone who's a Hitchins fan needs to worry about this fight, right? I think he's gonna right the ship. I think he is who we really think he is, and he's gonna be back. I just don't think he's ready for these bigger boys, right? The dudes at 140, like you just alluded to, is deep as hell. 130, 135, they got some guys, I wouldn't say they're as deep, but they top 10 is pretty serious. You're right, 154, I mean, 154, pretty much the top 10 is where it's at, right? It falls off a little bit after that, like you said, but the top, you're right, legit top 20 dudes at 140 could all give everybody the business, right? The dude at number 19 could possibly win a title in his next fight. You know what I mean? So there's that parity there. But I'm gonna tell you something. Even if Hitchens were to get a title fight next, it'd be interesting to see what he does. But I just don't think he's ready yet. I think he needs another good solid fight in there against another good solid prospect. He needs somebody on his level or above that is still a prospect to give him some of that smoke. Because them dudes at 140, I mean, really, if you think about it, right? Tiafimo, he ain't ready for that. You know what I'm saying? Matias, he definitely ain't ready for that. You know what I mean? Pitbull, people underestimate Pitbull the whole way. Pitbull gonna walk through all them hitching punches. I'm gonna tell you that right now. and and we know, he ain't even gonna get a Haney fight. Like that's just not gonna happen. Like let's call it what it is. So we'll see. I mean, the best of those four, to be honest with you, I think he'd have the best shot against is probably Tio, and that's a stretch because when Tio's on,
Tell you what, when you say styles make fights, so I think with his movement, his jab and stuff, I think that's the kind of thing that we saw Jermaine Ortiz use, or we could see a Devin Haney use. So I think he does match up pretty well against Tiafimo. As Cyber says, so bottom line is the 140 division is on fire right now. And to me, I just think that what people's takeaway from the fight last weekend should be that, like you said, wherever you want to rank Hitchens in 140, bottom line is he's a world class level fighter. Ain't no doubt about that. He's got a fantastic jab, fantastic boxing skills, and it's more about what Lemos did to prove that he's on the world level instead of being like, I think people look at that and say, oh, well, Hitchens isn't a contender anymore. It's like, no, he's still a contender. The thing is, we got two contenders out of that main event fight now. It's not that we went from 1-0, we went from 1-2, and that's going to tie into as we go to the co-main event now. Diego Pacheco was in against Sean McCalman, and kind of the same thing where Diego Pacheco was in against, as Hitchens was, an undefeated guy, a guy who hadn't been in with the same opposition that he had been in with. But one of the things we always stress, and one of my big pet peeves that I always say is that when you got a guy with an O, yeah, you can look at the resume and say this guy doesn't have the opposition level this guy does, but Styles make fights, and when you got that O, and it's a clean O, when there's no controversies with your wins, you're never sure where that ceiling is. We've seen a lot of dudes come out of the woodworks with an undefeated record that don't have a great resume, and then they all of a sudden they get a huge upset win. We saw that with Rafael Espinoza against Robesi Ramirez last year. Robesi was the big star, pound for pound level guy. You got a guy with an O who hasn't proved himself yet. That might be the next great thing. We just don't know yet. So, not that Sean McCalman is the next great thing per se, but he showed that he belongs in 168 level, 168 pounds, right in that mix too. He gave Pacheco a good amount of fits. That was an even fight throughout maybe the first half of the fight, and then Pacheco kind of pulled away. I was impressed with how he was able to kind of adjust on the fly in there with the guy who was trying to win. Another thing, when you get these dudes who are undefeated, they're also trying to win. Fighters, Chris Algieri and other guys have mentioned this before. When you have that O, you're like delusional in the sense that you don't think you can lose, and you don't know how to accept defeat either. So I think that's what I was impressed with Pacheco. Hybrid saying here it was a tough fight, and yeah, I'm high on Pacheco, but it was definitely a tough fight. But I think these are the kind of fights that you need in your progression on the way, because once you get, as you mentioned, too, Niz, once these guys get to the highest level, those dudes ain't gonna lay down. So it's good to kind of go in with those undefeated guys who are hungry trying to win now and getting the experience from it. So what do you think about Diego Pacheco kind of learning on the fly against a tough guy who I want to give a ton of credit to in Sean McCalman? You're on mute, my guy.
Hey man, we fuck up every now and again. I talk about this all the time too, right? It's really easy to get intoxicated with the shit you do well, and when you're winning, it's even easier, right? It's harder to do the things you don't do well in the gym because, well, you don't do them well, and that can play on your ego. You don't like doing things that make you uncomfortable. A lot of people go, well, why am I practicing that? Well, it's because of tough fights, right? When there's a tough fight where you got to pull them extra tools out the bag, and all you got is the one or two things you do really well, guess what? You know what I mean? That you have a harder fight than you need to. I don't have any doubt in Hitchins, Pacheco, any of these guys, right? I just think they need to we have to be in love with the things we don't do well. So when the things we are great at aren't necessarily working the way we want them to, we can pull that other tool out the bag, you know what I'm saying, and make it easier on ourselves. Just make it easy on yourself. You know what I'm saying? Pacheco's a great fighter. He's going to go on to be a great fighter. I think he's going to be a world champ someday. Is he going to be a pound for pound guy? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's rough. You gotta show me a whole another level of stuff for me to say that, right? But I think he's got the stuff to be a world champion someday. I want to see him, work on the things that he's bad at, and it's just like when we talked about Fundora, right? Love Fundora. I love that kid. I love his style. I love his heart, his balls, his backstory, his whole family. They're great. He finally worked on the shit that we were saying, hey, this is what you should do. And he did it. And he won the fight way more comfortably than if he'd have tried his typical, let me get in here and do the stuff I love to do, right? Sometimes I think guys need to just listen, humble themselves. But I'm going to tell you something. Pacheco is still going to be dangerous, bro. I mean, you fighting that super middleweight, 168. That's a division that, he can easily, like I said, the top 10 dudes are all legit. But that's when the cliff starts to fall off a little bit, right? At 168, you can make a name for yourself because there are even some guys in the top 10 where I think he has a chance of doing well against. You can't say that against at every division, like we just talked about 140, even 147, 130, 135. They got all killers. 168, I think he's still got the goods to get in there and mix it up and get him a title shot. Not this year, maybe, but in a year or two.
Without a doubt. And he's a young guy too, and we know Canelo's got all those belts, so it's not like he's going to get an opportunity in his next fight anywhere. So he's only 23 years old, so he's still learning in the game. And these are the kind of fights that are big. And I can't stress it enough to y'all listening to it. Even with Pacheco, it's not like your takeaway from that fight shouldn't be, man, Pacheco ain't it. Like he's a hype job, this and that. It shouldn't be that because one, he showed he can adjust on the fly. A lot of dudes would have been in there with a guy like McCalman, and once they got behind the eight ball, they wouldn't have been able to recover. He was able to on the fly make those adjustments, and he'll be that much better next time because of that. But kind of like we mentioned with Hitchins and Lemos. It's not is it that Pacheco's stock goes down. He probably stays where he was, but a guy like Sean McCalman, and we'll talk as always. We know Nibs gives the greatest recaps of why you should support local boxing, and this is another prime example of why you should. 2022, Sean McCalman was out here. There it is right there. But Sean McCalman was out here fighting in kind of these local shows, smaller venues, stuff like that. But you get enough wins on your resume, you get enough experience, you can go in there and have a performance just like that. And I really hope you're never sure with the tricky guy like that if that was the best thing for him to kind of put up a performance like that, because people might look at it and say, well, if he did that to Pacheco, do I really want to put my guy in there with him? But either way, he showed that he belongs at the world level at 168 pounds. Like I said, maybe not a title shot right now, but he shows that Pacheco is someone who we everyone thinks the world of. And he was in there giving him fits. And we've seen a lot of very good fighters not be able to do anything with Pacheco. So once again, I want to stress that it's less of what the A side guy didn't do, and we need more narratives surrounding what the B side guy did do. Because the A side guy's in there trying to do all the shit that they've always done. He just had another guy in there who didn't cooperate on that. And I just think we need to put some respect on these guys' names. So shout out to Sean McCalman. Hell of a performance, even in a losing effort. And I hope to see you soon on TV again, bro, because you certainly delivered the best that you could.
But that's the thing, right? Like we were just talking about. You want to see these guys fighting other guys on their level, right? Both of these guys started what around 5 6 years ago. If you take COVID out, so you take COVID out. Both of these guys started about 5 6 years ago. They're right around the same experience level, even though Pacheco's got a handful more fights than McCollum had, but they're basically right around the same time frame and experience level, right? They're both skilled. We just saw that, right? So it wasn't like he was fighting a bum with a 15-0 record who was fighting nothing but club guys and just skating by, who just so happened to be the better club guy. This was a guy who, yeah, was fighting at the club level, but he's a really good athlete and he's got really good skills. Again, you put him in there against another guy in that, another guy around Pacheco's, talent level, he might get that dub. You see what I'm saying? So again, that's why I tell people, don't look at Pacheco's one fight. He fought a legit dude. He didn't fight a bum. He didn't fight a scrub. He fought another guy around his level, and he had to tough it out. That's what you want to see. But there are some things that need to be worked on. You know what I'm saying? And you can see that, and that's cool too. You know what I mean? And like you said, hats off to McCollum. You know what I'm saying? Support that local boxing. This boy's gonna be back. I have no doubt about it. Both of them. Look out for both of them.
100%. And then just looking forward for Pacheco because McCallum, I want to see him in with any of these other prospects at 168 without a doubt to kind of prove, as you said, he could fuck around and beat some of those guys. So I think he's more than deserved the opportunity. And as Hybrid said, this is what I was impressed with. Pacheco did have to dig deep in his bag to get the win. And you see a lot of guys when they haven't been met with much resistance. Pacheco had some resistance in the Coceras fights. We already kind of seen this from him, but you're never sure if those guys can dig in their bag to get a win. So it was impressive to see him do that, even if it wasn't the performance that he wanted. You get out of there with the win, go back to the drawing board, and look to improve. So it's always better to do that in a win than it is a loss. And even a loss, I don't look at it as a loss. You can look at it as a lesson. You move forward and you get better at the end of the day. But for Pacheco moving forward, Mr. Edgar Berlanga had some words for him on Twitter, calling him a bum, calling him a bunch of little things. So you mentioned not a title shot for Pacheco. Let Pacheco next. Is it Pacheco Edgar Berlanga fight that you'd want to see next? Is that kind of a closer fight than you had anticipated before? What are your thoughts on? Because it seems like that would be both the makeable fight because they're both with Matcher and maybe the fight that both of those dudes need to kind of get to the next level at this point. So what were your thoughts on a fight between those two guys maybe for later this year?
I'd love it. I love it, and I love the smoke. People. A lot of people criticize it. Look, you got to understand this boxing. This ain't there's no. This ain't the NFL. This ain't the NBA where you got a boss telling you can't say certain shit. This boxing, bro. You know what I mean? And you get out there. Your job is to whoop another man's ass or a woman, depending on. But so I'm with this. I'm with the smoke, and I think Pacheco Berlanga would be a great fight because again, I think they're on similar levels. I know I almost feel sick saying this, but I would favor Berlanga in that fight. Don't quote me. I'm just saying. um, but I'll tell you this though, I would just love to see. I'm not gonna say nothing else because I'd love to see that fight. But I'm gonna tell you, for all those people out there who got something to say about people calling other people out, if you don't like it, go watch table tennis.
And also, isn't that what we want to see? I mean, I saw a lot of people criticizing Berlanga for it, but it's like, and Berlanga gets a lot of shit. But first of all, I think he's an underrated fighter. I think Pacheco would be the favorite on the books if they did make that fight, but I think he gets a lot of shit sometimes too. Where I think when a lot of people, and this goes for all sports, we've talked about it with football and your Sounds About Right podcast before, but when certain fighters, athletes, players get when people think the general consensus is that they are overrated, they automatically, I think, become underrated to a fault because of that. Because people think that they're held to a certain pedestal they might not be held to. But Berlanga's still a world class fighter. We saw it in his last fight. We've seen it in his last few fights. He started to kind of pick it up. The Quigley win was a decent win. He looked really good in his last fight too. So, and this is what we want to see from these guys. Even if you don't think um, Berlanga's ready for this kind of fight yet, which I think even TJ saying it's a 50-50 fight. I think it's a very competitive fight right now. He said hybrid would favor Pacheco in a close fight. So we're all kind of split on that fight. But that's what shows you this is a fight that we want to see. And this is what we want to see. We want to see a guy like Berlanga calling off Pacheco. We want to see Pacheco then responding. And I wouldn't doubt that if the paperwork was slid to both those teams, I think they probably would both sign on it. It's a fight that we do want to see. The kind of fights that between two contenders that make a real legit contender. The kind of fight I was talking about, a levels fight, where if two guys are both right here, the winner might go here, but the loser don't go down to here. The loser still keeps their spot, and those are the kind of fights we want to see in boxing where the loser can kind of keep their spot, if not even their stock go up a bit, but the winner becomes a legit contender. So shout out to both those guys. I do think that is a fight that we could make later on this year. As sure as I'd love to see it later on this year, but to be determined at this point. They're both with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom though, so I think it is certainly a realistic option. But we're going to switch gears a little bit now before we get into previewing the fights for next week as we kind of tipped the hand a little bit earlier on, but judging in boxing is a big conversation that goes on a lot. I mean, shoot, it's been going on for years since before I started watching boxing, since before you started watching boxing, since basically boxing's been invented. There's always been questions about judging, about biases due to promotions or affiliations or nationalities or anything, race, any of these things, and people think can impact the judging in a certain fight. So we've seen throughout the years, we've seen a ton of bad scorecards, but even just recently, we've seen. Now, you guys know me, I'm a big Rolly Romero guy. I love what he brings to the sport, his energy, but even as a Rolly super fan, I definitely did not have him up on the cards against Isaac Cruz before that stoppage. One judge did have that. We also saw, as I mentioned, I don't have no problem with the Hitchins scorecard because I actually thought he did edge it. But I do have a problem with the rounds that they scored for him potentially. We mentioned that the last round he needed to win the fight. They did give him that round. So talk a bit about some of the problems that you see in boxing and if there's any solutions that we think we could see or how we can kind of hold some of these judges accountable. Because I think that's a big problem that we have in the sport right now and how we could fix that. Shout out to my guy Jeff, also from Bourbon and Boxing, and be on the lookout because I should be on featured on Bourbon and Boxing tomorrow. We do a lot of talking about the other fights in boxing, but it's going to kind of focus on. He's going to ask some questions about just the sport of boxing, but also me and my journey in boxing and my upcoming fight as well. So shout out to his channel, support his channel, and be on the lookout because I should be on there tomorrow at some point during the afternoon. But going back to judging, so kind of give a rundown of your thoughts on judging in any ways we can kind of maybe hold these judges accountable because it's a dirty game sometimes. Some dudes get done wrong, and I think that's one of the big problems that we have right now in the sport. I'm sure you're making a good point, but we definitely want to be able to hear you, so I'll probably hop off mute again
I did
for
it
us.
again. I know. Yeah. All right. Look, we've all been, if you've been watching boxing long enough, you've seen some pretty bad decisions. But there are some laughable things going on in boxing now. Like anybody on the planet Earth that had Rolly winning any portion of his fight against Pitbull, I can't respect you, nor should you we even have a conversation about boxing. That's as clear as it gets. A guy getting his ass whipped. That's what that was. Anybody on the planet Earth who agrees with CJ Ross that Canelo was beating Floyd Mayweather or tied him needs their head examined. I'll give you some examples. If for those that are watching now or will watch later, No matter how you come upon this, if you come upon this, and if you're new to boxing in let's say the last 5-10 years, go look up Oscar De La Hoya, Felix Sturm. Go ahead and look up Paul Williams, Erislandy Lara. Go ahead and look up Courtney Burton, Emmanuel Augustus. That's a nugget for y'all. For those Friday Night Fight fans back in the day, I know y'all gonna know that one. You know what I'm saying? To me, the most egregious. And again, for those of you who are puppies in this game, Jose Luis Ramirez against Pernell Whitaker. Look, let me tell you something. This is probably the worst decision I've ever seen. In my, you want to talk about getting jobbed? This is what that means, right? And actually, Pernell Whitaker could probably hold the title for having the two worst decisions against him when he got that draw. We all saw that. You know which one I'm talking about. I ain't against Chavez. We all know what that was. That was some bullshit, and everybody knew it. Rolly getting a judge to tell him or say that he was winning that fight is worse than the people who thought Evander Holyfield got a draw against Lennox Lewis. That's how bad this was, bro. It was as bad. Like, let's call it what it is. It happens in the sport all the time. We see guys will have a great fight. The fight comes to the judges, and we're all scratching our heads like, what? We all saw it with what's his face, Cambosis. He recently got a win. He definitely didn't deserve.
Against Maxie Hughes last year, yeah.
Right. Even hell, even Tiafimo's the fight he had with the other fellow, he looked surprised that he won. He was like, "Oh shit, I won." If at the end of the fight, if you're the person who's getting the benefit of the doubt and you look surprised, that tells you everything you need to know. And we're seeing a lot of that, bro. I get it. These are the guys that are supposed to win. These are the guys you want to win for a lot of different reasons, mainly financial. But when a motherfucker loses, tell them they lost. You're not helping anybody, you know what I'm saying, but your pockets by getting these guys out of here. And there are a lot of guys whose careers could have gone on a whole different trajectory if they'd have got the decisions that they deserved. Emmanuel Augustus is one of them. His record is littered with prospects that he fought, that he beat, but they were given the decision because he was the opponent guy, right? We all see it all the time. It's part of the sport, but sometimes it's like, come on, bro. Like, for real? Like, there's no way you had that. You know what I mean? I will say this. I haven't seen it as much in women's boxing lately, and maybe it's because it's not as much money going through that portion of the sport yet. Thank God. But on the fellow side of things, we see it every time. That you can just about every card there's a card that comes up, and you're like, how do you have that?
No, 100%. And we got some good solutions in here. So this is why we're running a good show because the chat gives us some great solutions. And I think I might have to steal some of these ideas because I like them here. But this dude's a pretty smart guy. It's almost like we share the same name or something. But boxing needs a 2-minute report like the NBA. It has to explain questionable scorecards after fights. Easiest way to hold them accountable is to have them publicly explain their scores. Agree with that 100%. I'll touch on that in a second too. I think you need to separate platforms and promoters from judges. There should be no affiliations. Do not announce judges till the day of the fights. And then this also ties into judging, but also as you can see, refereeing too. It says Rolly versus Barroso was by far the worst one in years. I think, yeah, for me as a world title fight, that's the worst stoppage robbery I think that we've probably ever seen. Even if I think Rolly had hurt Barroso and could have been on his way to get a stoppage, he got more than the benefit of the doubt in that fight. But Bob's Kelly, as always, brings up a pretty good point about the 2-minute report like the NBA has. Like, so anyone who doesn't know what that means, if you have, let's say, you're watching an NBA game and with 45 seconds left, there's a call that you think should have gone the other way. Well, then the next day they have what's called a 2-minute report, and everything in the last 2 minutes of the game, they have an overall, like an official referee who didn't work the game, whose job is just specifically for that, and they say, okay, they made the right call here, they made the wrong call there. So you would have maybe like a head referee, or even would it be those referees to say, okay, you know what, after watching the fight, maybe I should have scored this round this way. So that could get into a slippery slope of changing results and stuff like that, but I do think that is one way that we should Whether it's that or another thing I thought about was post-fight interviews, just like fighters have to answer, promoters have to answer. I think judges have an answer. It's something that would be fair too. But there's one other thing that I want to mention because this is a perfect time because I was literally just going to kind of touch on this too. Is that they said judges should be viewing the fights from monitors so they see the fights as fans at home see it, provide better coverage from all angles. So I'll kind of tie that into my point. So they do put judges all on different sides of the ring to all get different aspects. One thing I want to see is maybe you can see still in real time because you want to maybe hear the power of the shots and stuff like that. But I think each judge should have a small little, whether it's a little monitor or a laptop or something that has the fight on the TV screen, but also like 4 or 5 seconds behind what it's like in real time. I've done this actually with fights that I watch. I'll have it on my TV and I'll have it on my computer and I'll pause it and go a few seconds behind. So if you have a certain shot, you're like, okay, did that shot land? How good did that shot land? Was it actually blocked? You could see, you could watch in real time. Okay, I think that shot might have landed. You know, in 5 seconds, it's coming back up on that monitor. You can peek over at the monitor and say, okay, no, that shot was actually, it didn't land, or that shot did land. So I think that the combination of interviews or using monitors to kind of watch replays in real time, I think are effective ways. So out of those two, if you were to pick one of those or any other things, what do you think about kind of those propositions or any other propositions you may have to help in kind of fixing the problems that we have in judging?
I think all of it. Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me would be a closed circuit judge. There should be a closed circuit judge. There should be someone who I get the ringside thing. I get why you want to be ringside. I get why you want to be live. I get why you want to have different angles from each person. I think a universal view of the fight where they can see all angles, right? That way you can't put it on that because it gets used as an excuse all too often. Well, the reason this judge scored it this way is because they see the fight from a different angle than you do. They might not see that punch that landed cleanly as the judge on this side of the ring or in the middle of, you know what I mean? If we had a universal view, that goes away. Well, you can't say that anymore because you're all looking at the same fucking view. You get to see all the punches, you get to see all the angles, right? More of a TV view, I guess we could say, right? Then there should be a closed circuit judge. One of the three judges shouldn't be hearing the commentator, shouldn't be hearing the crowd, shouldn't be biased by the oohs and the ahs. There should be a closed circuit judge that's watching just the fight, maybe on mute, right? They're not hearing the commentators, they're not hearing the crowd, the oohs and the ahs. Because let's face it, you can be swayed sometimes. How many times has a guy got the crowd on their feet cheering and he didn't land any of his punches? He was just throwing a lot of them, right? And the crowd goes crazy. And you go, yeah, but if you look at the 10 punches he threw, he landed one, barely. Then the guy who makes him miss all the punches lands one, nobody sees it because, of the flurry. I think maybe a closed circuit judge or a universal view would kind of take away the ability to say, well, these outside factors played into it, or the way he was at. Because we see that all the time too, even with the referee in the ring. The referee can be on one side, the guy could be holding or rabbit punching or does something dirty, but because of where the referee is, he doesn't see it. We all see it and we're going, "What are you doing? Call that," right? But we don't. He doesn't get to see it, so it doesn't get called. That's the same thing with the referees. Sometimes they don't even see the punches land, so like, I didn't see nothing. So I think that would be it. More of a universal view, a closed circuit judge. Um, I think that just it takes away from what the fighters are really doing in there and what they're accomplishing when they get these just really egregious scorecards, or the fact that you have somebody winning. Plus, I think that there's no way I really think to really clean it up 100% because if you're a judge, you're always going to be in somebody's pocket. But yeah, I think not announcing who the judges are going to be until the night of the fight, maybe that pulls away from, that money being slipped in that envelope or under the door as much, right? Or have a pool, right? So like, hey, we're going to have, 20 judges that we're going to pull from, right? And then at the end of right before the fight, hey, we pulled these judges, they're going to be the ones calling the fight. Boom, there it is, right? Like, and don't even tell or announce who the pool is. Just, hey, we got a pool of 20 judges. We're going to put them in a lottery. We're picking them the day of the fight, and those guys are going to be there. They got to be on call, right? Like you say, you got 6 judges or 7 judges, 10 judges, whatever. Hey, look, we're going to pull from these guys. Those are going to be the ones ready to go on fight night. There it is.
100%. So I hope that we got some higher ups in the boxing world kind of watching the show. Because I think we laid out a pretty solid blueprint, us along with the chat about certain things we could do. I know my favorite of all these was also the accountability thing, but also then the replay. If you're able to kind of watch and then have another stream, it's a few seconds behind. So, like I said, if you see a shot that you think might have landed, you can look back and say, oh, no, that shot didn't land. It doesn't impact the fight. I think I liked what you mentioned also with being on mute or having headphones or something. I think they might wear headphones anyways, but even if you try to not have the crowd affect you subconsciously, it's always going to do something. Even if, like you said, if you're at a bad angle and you see, okay, the guy throws a 10-piece combination and the crowd goes nuts and like the referee or the ring post or something's in your way, you're not going to be able to tell completely and you're going to give that guy the benefit of the doubt even if he didn't land any punches. So pretty good solutions we got here. Maybe we need to start a petition or something like that and kind of get these into writing or something. But either way, we got some great ideas. I don't have faith that the boxing world's going to listen to them, but hey, all we can do is kind of provide our opinion, and it's on them at this point. But we've seen, like you said, a lot of guys have lost out on money, lost out on their career because of decisions like this. So that's the shit that we want to see stop. But on a more positive note, looking forward, we got a pretty solid top rank card, just typical top rank. We got tomorrow night. We got two heavyweight two heavyweight fights on the main card. We got Jared Anderson and against Riyad Merry, and we have F.A. Ajagba against Guido Vianello, which to me is the most intriguing fight on the card. I really like that fight between F.A. and Guido. We get Jared back. Jared's been, I think he's been in a little bit of trouble. I think he's had two different slip ups since his last fight, but it seems like he's kind of getting his mind right. And this is a big fight for him coming back against Riyad Merry. Merry is he's a cruiserweight moving up, but he's had a few fights at heavyweight, and he did fight for a cruiserweight belt. So we'll get into the co-main event after two. But what are your thoughts on Jared, and what are you looking for him in this fight after being out for a little bit and some of the troubles that he's gone through recently?
I am off the Jared Anderson train. I know that's harsh. I don't give a shit. Um, I think that his best fight was against a last minute opponent who just so happened to be a world class boxer. People can say whatever they want to about him, but oh, he wasn't a real champion. Look, you win a world title and then have somebody tell you ain't a real champion, see what you don't do. You know what I'm talking about? He got in there against a real dude who fought other real guys, had a hard night, and then instead of stepping his level of competition up, or at least staying on that similar level, he went backwards. To me, that's some coward shit. Look, you want to swim in there with the big boys? Well, you got to get wet, bro. You can't just sit on the side sipping Mai Tais and talking about, yeah, I can get in there with the sharks. You ain't been in there yet. How do you know? You know what I'm talking about? He's in there fighting these dudes that ain't got no business being in the ring with him. This is a cruiserweight coming up. He's been fighting little guys pretty much his whole time. The one time he gets in there against a real legit dude, he finds out, oh, there's some trouble, in that upper echelon of guy. And we're not even talking about a dude who's top 10. We're talking about a guy who's, at the tail end of his career, but, is probably a gatekeeper at this point. You barely beat him, and now you want to sit up here and go backwards. Nah, man, I don't like that shit. And then I think it also kind of proves to, his immaturity, the shit he got into, shit he's been getting into, that his team has been covering up for the most part for him. Nobody wants to speak to that. Look, man, at this point, it's like, all right, bro, I'll believe you when you show me. Until then, I'm just not really that big of a fan at this point. And the fucked up thing is I was a huge fan until then. I think he's real regular, and I think he's just a bully. And he finally ran back into somebody who punched him back in the mouth, and now he wants to go back to bullying the other little kids. So let me see you in there against somebody real, and then we can have a conversation.
Yeah, so two counterpoints on that. One is that just we're all, I think clearly, as you mentioned, we're all rooting for Jared. We've been looking for the next American heavyweight, and it seems like he's got all the potential to be able to do it. You just got to see, like you said, is his mind sharp enough, and is he able to kind of put it all together? Because you got a guy, he's got a good jab, he works the body, he's got good feet, he's got athletic ability, everything you can ask for in a modern day heavyweight. Besides maybe just you want it to be a little taller, but you've seen guys like Usyk kind of be a little smaller, and he's bigger and thicker than Usyk is too. But And I think that also on the matchmaking part, I think that if it was up to him, now for right or wrong for his development, I think he would love to be in with those top guys right now. I think that we might say it's the right decision right now, but Jay Prince's management, Bob Arum, and Top Rank, those guys are managing his career, and they're looking at the Martin fight and they're saying, okay, we're going to maybe take one step back to eventually go two steps forward. So I do think that on Jared's part, I don't think that's him. His I think he would love to fight even Wilder and Zhang, the winner of that fight, even if we don't think he's ready for that fight per se. I'm sure he would love to fight all these guys. But for me, for tomorrow night, I'm looking to see just is he back? Because as you said, he is a cruiserweight, but he did weigh in today at 236, and Jared was 251. So Jared is bigger, but it's not like this guy is 205 pounds, 210 pounds. He's a little bigger of a guy. He is coming off a win against Tony Yoka. So he's been in with decent guys, and he should be a live body in there. Now, I think Jared is. Jared's got great boxing skills, but we've seen against these, as you said, these former cruiserweight and these other guys, the power is what he can lean on against these guys. I think he's going to lean on that, and if, as you said, there's some question marks surrounding Jared, but I think if he's going to be the guy we think he can become, I think that we should be in for a great performance tomorrow night and the start I don't even want to say a rebuild because he's still an undefeated guy on the come up, still looking for a big fight. But I think slowly, just maybe a little reset on him and going back to bigger and better things. But we shall see tomorrow night on that one.
Name one guy in the top 10 at heavyweight you really think Jared Anderson can beat Jay. I'm being honest with you, bro. That was a very eloquent, very politically positioned answer, and I appreciate you. That's why you are who you are. Let's be real. Give me a top 10 guy, a legit top 10 guy you think Jared Anderson can beat right now. I'll wait.
I, I'll say it. I think he can beat Zhang. I don't know if we count Zhang as a top 10 guy anymore, but I'll tell you, I think he can beat Zhang. Do we have to see some questions answered? Yes, but I'll tell you what, I do think he could win that fight. Is that a fight? Now, do I think he could win? Yes. If I was on his team, is that a fight that I would make tomorrow? No. So I think that kind of half answers your question is, does he have the ability to beat those guys? I think yes. Is he at the point right now where I'd put him in those kind of fights? No. So that's kind of a cop out for me, but I think he has the ability to do it. Maybe not, I would put him in those kind of fights right now, but we got to see going forward on that one. And yes, Hybrid, Abdullah Mason is on the card. We're going to touch on him briefly in a few seconds also.
He gets in there against Zhang. He getting put in the hospital. Now, I think B Brown has a point because I think Wilder's is, and it pains me seriously to say this. I think Wilder is washed. I think he's punch shy. He he has his only chance of winning, and he's not throwing it anymore. So I do think that there's a chance that if he got in there against Jared, against Wilder, he could pull that one off. I'm telling you right now, if anybody in his camp even mentions the word Zhang, they should be fired and never allowed back in the building. Because I'm gonna tell you something. I don't know if Jared gets up the same way Joseph did from those two knockdowns. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think Jared has the skills to land on Zhang the way maybe a Hergovich did. I think he's open. He's got his chin up. You do that against Zhang, bro. We've Joe Joyce will tell you how that works out. You know what I'm saying? So, look, okay, man, woo,
Yeah, I
woo.
do think Bree Brown a good point. I think Hergovich would be an interesting fight too. I mean, Andy Ruiz, I don't even know if we consider him an active fighter or not anymore. I think that's a guy he could beat too. And God forbid, I know Dakota's boy Joe Joyce. I think the way he's been looking recently too, but obviously kind of a guy on the slide. But him, Dubois, I think those are all winnable fights for Jared. I think that he's got the ability to be better than he's got a higher ceiling than all those guys. The thing is do those guys have higher floors right now because they've kind of accomplished a little bit more? And I think that's the debate we have. Is that I think we'd all agree that he's got the higher ceiling of all those guys. Thing is his floor high enough to be ready for stuff like that. So we got Bourbon and Boxer saying we'll go into this co-main event in a second now too. He said he thinks he fights FA if they both win tomorrow. I would have thought that too. That's a fight I've been wanting to see. I think the one problem with that is they're both managed by Jay Prince. I know Jay Prince does a lot of putting his two guys together, and I know that they've been training partners and sparring partners for a while too. So once we get to this co-main event, if Guido were to win, I think they set up Guido and Jared without a doubt. I think FA and Jared are in a weird spot because they're both managed by the same guy and they both train together. So I think that's one thing that's been they've run into a problem with that for match rating because that's the fight that I've wanted to see for a little bit now. He said he agrees top ranking is what holds them back. They do this with all their prospects. I think they're more used to the slow build where PBC might like kind of throw their guys in right away, sink or swim. Top rank kind of is more that methodical, old school kind of build. B Brown said 6 months ago he says he thinks Jared would have beat AJ, and I've always been high on AJ, but I think a lot of people would agreed with that too. We got Hybrid agreeing with you, saying that Jared needs to stay away from the Big Bang Zhang for the time being. So what's
Look, I'm gonna tell you something. I was a huge Jared Anderson fan. Y'all know this, but I'm gonna tell you something. There's something to be said when you fight up. And I know a lot of people think Charles Martin is washed. A lot of people think Anderson blew him away in that fight. I see it differently. And the way I see it is he got lucky because Charles Martin is where he is in his career. I think of Charles Martin 5 years ago beat the brakes off of Anderson from what I saw in that fight. And there's nothing I saw from Anderson in that win, as impressive as it might be, right, that let me go, oh, okay, this dude is on his way. He barely got by a guy he should have knocked out in the third round or by the third round, right? Let's be real clear. Charles Martin is not beating any of the top heavyweights, period, anytime soon. You should have wiped the floor with him, and you went tooth and nail with this dude, right? First time you went to decision instead of a. I'm here to tell you, he fights any of them big boys. Look, people look. Andrew Ruiz ain't fought in forever, but that boy can still box. People forget he's a boxer. Look, if he hadn't got the Happy Meal syndrome after his first fight against AJ, he'd have beat him again. So let's be real clear. Andrew Ruiz, and he looks good. I don't know what the hell they got him on. He looks like motherfucking He-Man compared to what he looked like in that last AJ fight. You know what I'm talking about. Boy got abs now. Where the fuck they come from? Big Bang Zhang. Look, they should treat him like Area 51. Don't even go over there. Nah. Just stay away. I think Hergovich maybe. You mentioned some good names. Now let's be real clear. I think Dubois, that would be a good litmus test. It'd be like, okay, let's see you against that kind of guy. Derek Chisora, who's far past his chances at title, but could still give it. He's a gatekeeper type of guy, right? Put him in there against that kind of guy. See what he does there. But I'm here to tell you, he's not. Maybe Wilder, because I think Wilder's shot at this point. He ain't ready for Joseph Parker. He ain't ready. I don't even think he's ready for Joe Joyce, to be honest with you. I think Joe Joyce. Well, maybe because Joyce does mail his punches in, so but Joyce is a big dude. It looks like against the bigger boys, Jared is going to have some problems from what we saw in the Curtis Martin fight. That's all I'm saying, bro. Based on the evidence I've been presented.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment, even if I might disagree. I really do think, though, outside of Usyk, Joshua, and Fury, there's a lot of guys I think you could say beat him, but to me, I'm not certain that any of those other guys do beat him. Now, you could say it might not be a logical thing to fight those guys next, but I do think, as Jeff mentioned, the Zangs, the Parkers, as you mentioned, the Hergovich and those guys, I think Jared does have a higher ceiling than all of those guys. The thing is, we've seen a lot of guys have high ceilings and never reach that full potential. I just think that the boxing ability he has, and even in the Martin fight, he got rocked in that fight, but then going in that seventh round, winning the round. Now, it ain't look pretty, but going back to just the jab and jabbing his face off for the next 2 rounds after that shows me that he did deal with adversity in that moment. He got clipped later on in that fight again, too, but I think, as you mentioned, those are the kind of things you need to see from guys. It's all well and good, and I think he learned more in that fight, as we always mention with these guys. He learned more in that Martin fight than he did in any of his other wins combined. So we shall see. I think tomorrow's a big step in the right direction for him if he does do what I think he can do. But we shall see on that. But the co-main event, which I really, really like.
Yeah, let me ask you this real quick before we move on, bro.
Mm-hmm.
The guy he's fighting, you think the guy he's fighting beats any of those dudes we just mentioned?
No, but I do think, I mean, he did, and I don't think Tony Yoka's great. But this is the thing also. So do I think that guy beats any of those other guys? No. But I do anticipate that Jared could show levels tomorrow night between him and that guy, as some of those other guys also would too. So I think that you see what I'm saying?
Acceptable is if he smokes this dude.
Hmm.
If this
I think
goes
that's
to
in the cards. I think that's in play.
if,
Hmm.
if this goes to a decision, or even if he knocks him out, but but he's got some problems with him up until the knockout. Anything other than you just railroading this dude is unacceptable as far as I'm concerned, considering where you've come from, right? If this dude can't beat any of the guys in the level or be competitive with them, why are you fighting him? That's just me. That's just me. I'm sorry. I was ranting. You right, I'm wrong.
Nah. You bring up good points. I do just think that you're sleeping on my boy Jared Anderson a little bit, but we will see. And the one thing about you is what we're doing here is we keep it real. If he in time shows that he can beat those guys, you'll be the first one to say, you know what, hey, props to you. You did your thing. So the jury is still out on that, but I do think that I think Jared's gonna surprise some people now. So he had the huge hype. The hype's kind of came down a little bit, but dude's still got all the talent in the world. As I mentioned, if you want to check off everything you want out of a heavyweight boxer, besides being like 6'7", 6'8", he's got everything you can ask for. It's not like he's 5'10" out here. He's still about 6'2", 6'3", solid, can box, good jab, good movement, good body work, sets up his shots well, so kind of boxes like a middleweight, light heavyweight. So I still think the sky's the limit for him, but the jury's
Maybe he
still
should
out.
fight Jake Paul next.
Hey, I'm telling you, I wouldn't be upset with that one. But as you said, that they should treat Zhang like Area 51. I think Jake would treat Jared and those guys like Area 51 times 10 going forward on that one. But we'll real quick touch on this co-main event because I ain't gonna lie, I really like this co-main event. I saw Guido, me and Dakota when we were ringside for my guy Abraham Nova fighting Oshaki Foster. Guido Vianello fought there and he looked like dynamite that night. Moses Johnson isn't a contender in the heavyweight division, but he's a respected guy, and especially in the New York area. He's someone who people have known a lot. He's got some decent pedigree behind him, but Guido just steamrolled him. I think he scored like 4 or 5 knockdowns in the first round and got the first round stoppage. So after that loss to Johnny Rice, he's kind of taken a step in the right direction now too, because he's really kind of shown that okay, all the talent and ability that we thought he had, he looks like he could be putting it together right now. And then he's going in against the silent roller F.A. Ajagba, the latest example of taking tough fights, making you a better fighter. He took the out of Frank Sanchez, and as you mentioned with some other guys, as Hybrids mentioned, and two here in the chat, that after F.A. lost to Frank Sanchez, he didn't then go back and then take a bunch of stay busy fights. He went back in the mix and he fought some of these other guys. So he fought Stephen Shaw, he fought Kasabuski, he fought Joseph Goodall, who's still a good Australian fighter too. So he's been in the mix and he's been picking up some big wins. So I think this is a big fight for both these guys. The winner, I think, puts himself in the spot to be a real contender. I think if Guido wins, we do see him and Jared next. So, what are your thoughts on this fight between Guido and FA? Because to me, this is my favorite fight of the weekend. It's a fight that can go the distance. It can be over in 30 seconds. Not really quite sure what to expect. FA is the favorite, but what's your thoughts on Guido Vianello going to get in against FA Ajagba in tomorrow's co-main event?
I mean, common sense tell you FA about to go in here and knock this boy silly. But when you look at outside of the Jonathan Rice debacle, you know what I'm saying? Guido is on point, bro. He's nobody's bitch. So I mean, with that knockout of Moses, I mean, I'm not a fan of him going rounds with Curtis Harper. You know how I feel about that guy. But
But hey, one thing about Curtis Harper is we've seen that he ain't in there to win all the time. I was actually no, I wasn't there at that fight. I saw Curtis Harper fight another guy, so it shows Curtis Harper might be getting a little too many opportunities. But Curtis Harper, we've seen he ain't really in there to win. He's in there to survive. So if there's one guy I kind of give a little slide to, I'll give Guido some benefit of the doubt on that because Curtis Harper is in there, the definition of to survive in there. So I give him a little credit for that one.
here goes Jack being nice again. All right, so I mean, to me, I think those were his two worst outings, right? Because I think his talent level, I think he should have stopped Curtis. But he did get a unanimous decision. Jonathan Rice surprised us all by knocking him out. I think Guido is one of those scary kind of guys because you don't know, right? Like on paper, FA should win this fight hands down. But Guido's got enough in that tank where you can go, okay, hold on, wait a minute, bro. Like he can if he can get FA into some deep waters, that's where you get FA in trouble, right? Get past those first 4 or 5 rounds. You get past that fourth, fifth round, you can start to get FA into some trouble. And Guido's got enough power, serious enough power to keep a motherfucker off of him power long enough to get to those rounds. So to me, it's going to be interesting to see how long the fight goes. If the longer the fight goes, the more I lean towards Guido. And I think, actually, to be honest with you, Guido's a more intriguing fight for like the Jared Andersons of the world, like you said. I'll be honest with you. I think FA is kind of teed up the perfect kind of fight for Jared Anderson, right? I think Guido gives him a little bit more to worry about. But I mean, FA, bro, he's got that fucking eraser, man. So it's one of those things where it's just like it's kind of like the Deontay Wilder factor, right? No matter what we think of him, he's got an eraser. So he could be losing 11, 11.5 of the rounds and come out and win. So it's one of those things where that's where you take it. For me, my money, I'm taking FA, but I wouldn't. I'd be interested to see how long this fight goes, though.
Yeah, the thing with FA too is he's been adding dimensions to his game. As I said, he's got the big right hand, but he's added pretty solid jab in there against Goodall. We saw him use the uppercuts too, so he's been able to work the body a little more than he has before. So he's definitely talk about learning on the fly and taking even the loss against Frank Sanchez not as a loss, but as a lesson and becoming a better fighter from it. But I think, do I smell a little dog watch pick though? Because I agree that FA is the favorite, but he's a minus 850 favorite on FanDuel right now. So Guido is plus 550. So not that we're going to advise anyone, we're not going to advise people to do certain things with their money. It's your money, do what you want. But I would say, even if I'm picking FA to win, I think Guido at plus 550 in the heavyweight division, I think that's something worth a little sprinkle on that one. So plus 550, $10 to return 65 ain't the worst bet in the
Hey,
world, I think.
I would say this: if you got $20 in your sheet couch cushion someplace, go ahead and put that on Guido. You know what I'm saying? You can put the 40 on FA if you want to, but if you want to make your money back, I'm trying to tell you, double up because, like you said, when it comes to heavyweight odds, I've always said you get anything over a plus 400, go ahead and put a little something on that because heavyweights is heavyweights. A dude could be trash. He only needs one punch to win a fight. So and so there's that. But if your only loss is to Frank Sanchez, bro, you're doing pretty good. You know what I'm saying? So I think FA, and you're right. I think he's been learning. He's been getting better. I'd love to see what he does next. You know what I mean? Hopefully, maybe one day, him and Frank can run it back. We'll see how that goes.
Yep, and as I said before, just he's the latest example of how taking hard fights can improve you as a fighter and it helps you grow too. So he's showing that going back in the lab and working on things always works too. But when you're able to do that against guys who will test you in real time in the ring, that's always the best way to kind of improve your stock. That's exactly what FA Jogba has done. But we're in a good solid little undercard here, so we're not going to really go into any of the fights, but I'll mention them, and anything that jumps out at you, you can give them a shout real quick before we move on. But as always, I know Hybrid mentioned it earlier, but we got an Abdullah Mason sighting on this undercard, and man, if you're a boxing fan and you don't like Abdullah Mason, I think you might need to find a new sport. I think that kid's got everything you asked for: boxing skills, power, movement, offense to defense, defense to offense, charisma, star power. I think anything you could possibly ask for in a star. And he's a southpaw too. Man, Abdullah Mason is a big, big problem. He's going in there against a respectable guy who's got 19 fights, only been stopped once. Ronald Ron was 14-5. Interested to see how that plays out. Robson Conceição, who I think is one of the most underrated fighters in boxing, who I thought had a good. We both did. We both thought he had a decent argument to beating Emmanuel Navarrete when they fought. Got off the deck twice. Showed the absolute heart of a champion. One of the best guys in the sport to not be a world champion. I thought he beat Valdez. I thought he could have beat Navarrete. His only other loss is to Shakur, so that shows that he's right in the mix at 130 with the win here. I think that he's right back in title contention. And then we got Ruben Villa in the mix too. Another guy, he already beat Luis Alberto Lopez. He had a close loss to Navarrete. And then we got a nice little sneaky fight between Charlie Suarez and Luis Correa. Do any of those jump out to you? I mean, I'm sure Abdullah Mason first and foremost does, but if you were to tell anyone listening or anyone who will listen what to watch out for in the undercard tomorrow night, floor is yours. What would you tell them?
I mean, look, you hit it right on the head. I mean, Abdullah Mason, bro. He's one of those guys that's must see TV. So because you already mentioned it, I'll just say Robinson can say Sal. I'm going to echo this, bro. He's one of the guys you watch whether he wins or loses. That effort he put in against Navarrete, bro. It shows you not just skill, but balls and heart. If you have those two things, you can go really far in the sport of boxing. Because let's face it, all these guys, especially at this level, they all train hard. They're all busting their ass. They're all running the miles. They're all hitting the bags. They're all putting in that work, right? So, what separates these guys really when you get to this level is not always the skill, it's having balls and heart. If you can take a punch and get your ass back up and keep sticking to the game plan, it's so many. How many times have we seen the dude get knocked down? He starts doing a whole bunch of shit out of character and then gets his ass whipped. Robinson Casey got knocked down twice, got back up twice, and stuck to the game plan, and still got a draw. You feel me? Like, and to be honest with you, if he'd have just got knocked down once, he would have won the fight. So that tells you everything you need to know about a guy like him. I don't care who his opponent is. Sign me up. I'm If he's on the undercard, I'm tuning in early because I'm going to watch his fight. He's a guy that could be on a card, an undercard. I'll watch his fight and not watch the main event. That's how good he is, in my opinion. So I would say, if you're a person who likes to watch full cards, definitely tune in and catch Robson. I think he won't let you down. He'll give you your money's worth.
100%. He deserves all the respect in the world too, as you said. Just even an Olympic gold medalist who was kind of in a weird spot in his career, was being in his 30s, didn't get the big fights, but then he got the Valdez fight. The fight a lot of people thought he won. I thought he won. I think you thought he won that fight. Doesn't get that opportunity. Then fight Shakur. Shakur misses weight, but he loses that fight, but still puts a decent effort. Probably tested Shakur before De Los Santos more than anybody else had. Has a fight against Navarrete. Anytime you got a guy who going into that 12th round, after the 11th round, he was hit so hard he didn't know where he was looking around. He didn't know how to get back to his corner. Then you go back in the 12th round, you throw over 100 punches and you win that last round to avoid a draw. Man, that's what boxing's all about. So I don't think there's anything negative anyone can say about Hobson can say so. I echo your point. Tune in to watch him because we talk about these guys undercards who are going to be in big fights. He's going to be in a big fight probably later on this year or next year. 130 is a real fun division. He fits perfectly in that division. Tune in tomorrow night for him and all the other fights on ESPN and ESPN Plus. So quickly now, before Nibs gives his spiel, and we kind of tie in some of these things we've mentioned today about local boxing. I want to kind of to tie in my local boxing aspect. The Boston Butchers and Team Combat League had their first match, so to speak, yesterday against the DC Destroyers. Their debut match, the DC Destroyers were in the league last year, so all their guys had a bunch of experience. But the Boston Butchers did come out on top last night. Rashidi Ellis was named the star, or guys like the MVP, quote unquote, of the match. He had a big stoppage and then had a win against Michael Fox later on in the fight, but or later on in the card. But the Team Combat League is really really cool, and I think it's only they have them free on YouTube the first half, and I think the second half is then on YouTube the day after. But anyone who's a boxing fan, one of the unfortunate things about boxing is you got to pay for a lot of these things. But if you're able to pay $30 a month for the zone, it's only $8 a month for all of the Team Combat League, and I highly, highly suggest looking to invest into that because, man, you want to talk about all action, no feeling out. So it's 24 rounds. You have each fighter's different each time. You have 16 fighters in total. 8 fighters go twice in the money round, and they all fight one round apiece. No time to feel each other out. No time to kind of get it going, kind of download the data, as I like to say. It's just good old boxing at the highest level. As I wrote an article for NY Fights talking about it, called just it's unhinged chaos basically, and that's what we all want to see in the sport. I love the sweet science. You appreciate the sweet science, but there ain't nothing better than just straight up chaos in a boxing ring. And that's what you see in that league. Saw a few stoppages too. So guys also have to. Because I talked with some of the guys today. I was in the gym with, and it's interesting because you got to try to manage between going all out but also still being defensively responsible. And it's kind of like those guys are back in the amateurs again with the pacing of the fight. So I highly, highly recommend looking into the Team Combat League because there's a lot of big stars in there. Like I said, the Boston team has a lot of guys. I mentioned Rashidi Elsa's 15 other fighters. Go to teamcombatleague.com to look at the whole roster. I don't want to miss anybody because they all deserve respect. The DC side, I know they had a bunch of guys. They had the Fox brothers out there. They had a bunch of other great fighters too. So it's just high level boxing, and it's what you want to see. Like I said, unhinged chaos, all action. They roll them out. The best thing is one fight goes, the round goes. Okay, as soon as those two guys exit the ring, the next two guys are right in the ring. Between 8 rounds and 16 rounds. They have a little bit of downtime in between, but all action from the opening bell to the closing bell. And hey, is there anything else you can ask for in the sport of boxing, which unhinged KO with no breaks in between? I mean, come on now.
No, you know what it reminds me of is, now that I had a chance to kind of look into it a little bit. For those MMA fans out there that we have, the IFL. They had the IFL was kind of like an MMA kind of thing. It was like a team thing. It was kind of similar rules, but not. And people loved it, right? I don't know why it went away, but this seems like a similar concept. And I mean, really, let's be honest, bro. You put two dudes in the ring punching each other in the face. Sign me up. That's and I get to see it at a high level, and I get to see it all action, no stops, all gas. Yeah, yeah. Give it to me. I'm with you. Yeah, Jack.
100%. It's the perfect combination, as you said. Any of these teams that you watch, you're gonna see. It's a beautiful blend, I think, of the elite level, and then the local level of boxing. Because you'll see, yeah, each team will have a few guys that you know, but you'll also see a few guys on the local level who you may not know yet. If you're in that region, like I'm in the Boston, New England region, so we all know who these guys are, but y'all might not know yet. But y'all are about to find out sooner rather than later. So one, these guys are going to be on a big platform here, and two, all these fighters are going to be on big platforms going forward too. So it's a perfect way to kind of see the high level guys you know, and to also learn some new names too. So I think that perfectly ties into
Now, do these count
yeah.
on their records? Do
No,
these
so
do
they
these?
have. Yep, so they're just 1 round fights. So, but on box record, if you look up any of these fighters, like if you look up Rashidi Ellis, for example, it has his regular record on box record. And then they have where they have pro, amateur, and then they have TCL. So he's technically 2-0 in the TCL right now. So they do keep records for that. It's like a separate own thing. But so yesterday, because the DC guys all have experience, so you said okay, all the Boston guys were making their debut, which makes it even more impressive to me that they won because they've never been in this format before. But you said okay, this DC guy is 7-3 in Team Combat League. This guy is 5-4. This guy is 9-0. So it kind of gives you a basis of how they've done, both as a pro, but also in this format too. So it don't count on their pro records, but they do keep a record tally of that also to kind of give you an idea how they're doing in that format.
Hey, man, tune in, bro. You know what I mean? It's all action. I'm with it. Support boxing on all levels.
100%. I think there ain't no better way to tie into now our little spiel, our outro, as I like to say, how we always end things. So just to support local boxing. I know you've gone to some shows in Arizona. I've been to some shows in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. I'm going to a few shows coming up in Massachusetts for some guys that I know. As we get closer, I'll give those cards some shine and give those guys some shine. But for now, we just seen two guys, Gustavo Lemos from Argentina, but Sean McCalman, who was also in 2022, was fighting on these local shows. So, as always, ain't nobody does it better than yourself. That's why we leave it to you. But tie in the importance and let the people know why you should support these local boxing, and also how it's a trickle down effect from the highest level all the way down, because these guys all start from somewhere.
Look, perfect example of this guy right here. Guess who's gonna be fighting soon, right? So if you don't know, you should know. Jack motherfucking Kelly is gonna be making his debut in the boxing, the world of sport of boxing, as an actual fighter. I'm not worried about him. He gonna do what he does because that's what we do here at Ketchikan County. I'm here to tell you, man. At all levels, we all love the sport of boxing. We all love the good story, right? We love the guy who came from nothing, got it out of the mud, right? And then became big time. The quintessential, you know, boxer that did that. I'm going to give you a quote from him. It's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. We've all seen the movie Rocky Balboa. Guess what? That dude's in the Boxing Hall of Fame, and he wasn't even a real fighter. So why though? People love that story. You look at it is the most successful boxing franchise, right? Because I mean, what the first Rocky movie came out in like the fucking 70s. They just did Creed 3, 2 years ago. And it's all part of the same thing. Why? Because people like those stories. They like to see the guy come from the gym down the street where he's sharing the locker room with his opponent. They're riding together to the event, right? Now he's on the national level, or maybe he's on the local scene. Then he gets to the national level. Then he gets on those pay-per-views, right? But they all had to start at that gym that we could all go to next to the bodega, next to the to the Piggly Wiggly, or at somebody's basketball field or basketball court or football field. All of these guys start from there. Most of them, unless they've got a whole bunch of money behind them. And guess what? They appreciate, they understand, and they grow from that. It's nothing better than to see a guy get it out the mud that you got to see with your own eyes in your own neighborhood with your zip code, area code on his back, pulling everybody with him. Support local boxing, baby. That's why we're here.
100%. So, as always, want to appreciate all y'all in the chat for tuning in. Y'all help the show kind of flow, and you guys give us some pretty damn good ideas. So, keep them coming in these upcoming weeks. We always appreciate hearing from y'all. Y'all's input. You guys are very knowledgeable, too. So, it's like you guys basically run the show with us, too. I mean, we're on screen, but you guys are basically right there with us. That's why we pin the comments on screen as well. So, episode 25. You'll catch us for episode 26 next week. We've got some big fights coming up. Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney. Going forward, Canelo Munguia we got coming up. We got some big fights after that too. Tyson Fury, Usyk, Better BF Bivol, Tank and Frank Martin. So we didn't have enough time to kind of get into talk about those fights, but I got some bold takes for some of those fights coming up. I'm sure you will too. So that is it for episode 25 of Catching Connor. Catch us next Friday. And as y'all know, I mentioned before, Jeff from Bourbon and Boxing is going to have me on tomorrow. So Nibs mentioned too, I am getting ready to kind of get in the ring, but I don't like to talk about it. I like to be about it. But if you want to hear me talk about it a little bit, I'm gonna kind of do a
That's what you
little
got
bit
me
of
for. I'm gonna do all the talking for
uh-huh.
you. You all about that business. Let me
That's a
talk.
fact. That's a fact. But luckily for y'all, if you do want to hear it, I am gonna talk a little bit about it on his channel, just my journey through boxing, through the media side, but also through the fighting side of it. So salute to you, Hybrid, everyone else in the building. Appreciate y'all.